It was said earlier in in a question that that the Republicans or transportation is trying to change the 1,500-hour rule. Ironically, the Transportation Committee was actually passing the FAA authorization bill across the hall that had no references whatsoever to the 1,500-hour rule. However, it did have a reference to the age that we force pilots to retire in commercial airlines from 65 to 67. And so I think that may be where the confusion is. But to touch on that subject, Professor Mulligan, what is the implication, or how does it impact the economics of the airline industry, of the cost to the consumers, and really to the individual when this body arbitrarily picks a date like, you know, the forced age of 65 for retirement?
I mean, one of the problems with regulation is it doesn't adapt well to changes, and, you know, companies have to adapt to change. Otherwise, another company, you know, beats them out. They lose customers, et cetera. And adapting, we've had a lot of changes in the last couple of years in personnel areas, and it's been tough on airlines and many industries. And
so the costs are then bore upon the consumer, right? And the individual who who potentially could have saved more money, waited to retire at a later age, build more wealth. Those options are not available.
That's right.
So, and I think this may be a question for Mr. White. When it comes to, are you familiar with the anti-delegation doctrine?
Yes, I am.
Okay, maybe this is an opportunity to nerd out about this topic, but you know, the Constitution is very clear in Article 1, Section 1. It says, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of the Senate and House of Representatives. What's the history of, and what is the authority that Congress has to actually violate the Constitution and give up that authority to the executive branch?
I could spend a semester on this, so I'll just say very briefly. From the very beginning of our federal government, the Supreme Court and the rest of the government recognized that Congress would sometimes need to give some discretion to the departments, but giving away too much discretion to the executive risks the effect of basically transferring the legislative power itself out to agencies. So from the early 1800s onwards, the Supreme Court and others have grappled with this. Sometimes it's informed the way that Congress reads statutes. Sometimes it has spurred the Supreme Court to declare statutes unconstitutional because they were so open-ended that they, in effect, gave Congress's legislative responsibility to another branch of government.
What is are there any court cases going through today that would touch on this topic?
Well, yeah, there are coming up through the lower courts. The case I alluded to earlier in the Supreme Court regarding the CFPB's power funding structure is in many ways a delegation case. Congress, in effect, delegated its power of the purse out to the CFPB. But cases like West Virginia versus EPA and others involving how we interpret statutes, they're very much infused with these similar non-delegation principles.
Thank you. My time has expired.